This is VK3SL bidding the listener a very good evening and welcome to this test transmission on 160 metres and also 2 metres. Streaming also online can be found at the streaming service is linked on my QRZ page. If you look up my call sign VK3SL, it can be found there. And we having a shorter program tonight, getting up early for the Hamfest tomorrow. And I've had a very big week. Only got home a short time ago, a big country trip. And, in the car, I had a good listen to the music of Slats Randall, one of the plantation bands, from Minnesota. So, let's kick off with Slats Randall and the orchestra from 1929, VK3SL testing.
I can't stand turnips, I hate turnips, why it's true. But if you said turnips, then I'll eat catnip, why I'd do anything for you. Though I don't like dancing, I can't stand dancing, I hate dancing, why it's true. But if you said Joe dance, why I'd even toe dance, I'd do anything for you. Sweetheart, oh can't you see just what you mean to me? Though I don't like liquor, I can't stand liquor, and I hate liquor, it's true. But I would drink liquor till I got chicker. I'd do anything for you.
Okay, we heard Joe Roberts with Mr. Slats Randall and his orchestra, and that was recorded on Brunswick in 1929. And there's been a compilation from Mr. Prozut of the music of Slats Randall and his band, Plantation Band. Records are not often seen, and there's not a lot of information about this group, but they're musically really quite interesting and right on the beat, really quite dense arrangements. So, I've been quite compelled by this. So, the next one, I'll play a few of these because it's good missions fodder, and this will sort of set the scene for the later part of the program because I am going to play the Moon tape, or my Moon tape, and but before doing so, we'll have a bit of a moon theme with less well-known songs about the moon. We sort of are awash with Moon, Fly Me to the Moon and Moon Glow and things like that, but this is one you won't hear on the mainstream airwaves, and rather it's more suited for test transmissions. All right, so let's have Blame It on the Moon. This is Oscar Gross, who's the vocalist on this, 1929, and we're hearing the music of Slats Randall. This is VK3SL testing.
Your hand, you mustn't scold, please understand, it isn't my fault, blame it on the mood. Or if I'm gay and steal a kiss, then I'll just say, I'm sorry miss, it isn't my fault, blame it on the mood. If I start talking about a ring, or if I mention a flash, don't be frightened or anything, 'cause I'm just hot like that. But if you see my point of view, then you for me and me for you. It isn't our fault, blame it on the moon.
Yeah, I really like the sound of that band. So that's Randall and his orchestra, and they made about a dozen sides for Brunswick between 1929 and 1932. And yeah, it's quite a compilation of them here. And musically, they're really quite together. It's a good sound, good arrangements, but we know little about them. Interestingly, a bit of a YouTube troll has not troll, it's a Freudian slip. YouTube troll has revealed that on one of the uploads, the grandson of the vocalist, that's the grandson of Joe Roberts, chimed in with a few anecdotes. Joe Roberts is the banjo player and vocalist, and I think he wrote quite a few of the songs as well. But so in saying that the band was sort of fairly short-lived, and then he, I think he became a merchandise clothes. He sold dressing gowns or something. Alrighty, so let's have a listen to the next one off this list. Is it's a cover of a tune that Coon Sanders Nighthawks made very famous. It's got a great big date with a little bitty girl. And we hear Joe Roberts, the gentleman I just mentioned. He is the vocalist on this. And but again, a great arrangement. It's full of life and vigour and terrific solos. It's there's a great trombonist in the band, and I'm wondering if it's Miff Mole. A couple of these were made in the last one was recorded in Chicago, but I think this one, if I'm not mistaken, is, I'll just check now. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is recorded in Chicago as well. So there could have been some other session players who joined in. But yeah, we'll have a listen to Joe Roberts, who's vocaling on this. We've got a great big day with a little bit of girl, and we're hearing the music of Slats Randall, and I'm VK3SL, testing, of course.
Got a great big date, and I can't be late. Gangway,
way. Got a lot of cause for worry, my big chance and how, wow. Please don't stop me now. Gotta give my feet some action, gotta hurry on my way. Got a great big date with a little bitty girl I love. Got a very sweet attraction, got a lot of things to say. Got a great big date with a little bitty girl I love. She's got a quiet apartment with a Davenport for two. I'm gonna try it tonight if it's the last thing that I do. Gotta pop that set question, gotta give my nerve a shove. Got a great big date with a little bitty girl I love.
Yeah, we just heard the music of Slats Randall and his orchestra, recorded on Brunswick in 1929, and that's a cover of the famous song made by Coon Sanders Nighthawks in the same year. And in that instance we heard the vocal of Joe Roberts, banjo player. Apparently he had perfect pitch, and I think he did all the arrangements and wrote quite a few of the songs. I'd like to find out more about them. I'll have to get the big Rust book out and delve and self-educate about this band. It's certainly captured my imagination. I think they sound really good. Really interesting arrangements, lots of variety and little micro gear changes. Let's have a listen to another. I'm going to keep this rolling for a bit. This is all modulated sound for the purposes of testing the equipment here and for people to test their receivers as well. So we're working in the AM mode on 160 metres and FM on 2 metres. And of course there's a streaming service too if you feel inclined to jump on board and have a listen in True-Fi. Okay, well, the next song is a track called Let's Don't Say We Did. Again, Joe Roberts is the vocalist. He may have written the song, I'm not sure. But in this instance, there's some fabulous ensemble playing. In fact, there's a trombone solo behind the vocalist, which is really interesting in it. So it's better listen to the trombone than the vocalist. And after that, there's a chorus effect with a number of soloists, and it is just of high caliber. The ensemble playing is really, really good, and they're feeding off each other, and it's got that wonderful sort of ensemble playing taking a life of its own. And it's sort of a classic instance of a really good orchestration, allowing room for great soloists to sort of make something of their own little contributions, and it just makes up for a very interesting arrangement overall. So yeah, this is certainly an example of that. Now let's have a look. What am I going to need to do? Yeah, so listen out for that. Listen out for the trombone solo and also the solo playing afterwards. Now I think those solos, I just have a feeling that Miff Mole might have something to do with this, and maybe even Red Nichols, but I might be wrong. And something worth looking into. But great music making. Alrighty, let's keep the ball rolling. This is VK3SL, and we're testing on 160 metres.
she holds my hand and she whispers, oh, let's don't and say we did. And every time I beg a kiss, do I get kissed? No, I get this. Let's don't and say we did. She's just the type for loving in a cozy corner. But when I get her there, then she don't wanna. And I'll be darned if this is right. Here's how she kisses me goodnight. Let's don't and say we did. Good night, but here's the way I think is right. Let's do and say we did.
Okay, yeah, we just heard Let's Don't Say We Did. That was Slans Randall and his orchestra with Joe Roberts on the vocal there, and some fabulous ensemble playing. I'm really impressed with this band. I've listened to this a few times in the car. I've been driving for hours today, and I've had a good saturated listen of this ensemble, and there's a lot in there. They're compelling. So, yeah, it's good to make a feature of it. And since I haven't really got much else organised tonight, so this is the flavour of the moment. Yeah, the music of Slans Randall. Okay, let's have another one, and another, I believe this definitely is a composition of Joe Roberts, the banjo player vocalist, and notice his vocalising, he's really on the beat, and he's got a great sense of rhythm, fantastic sense of rhythm, and apparently he was a virtuoso, and a really accomplished player. And so there's a few biographical details about Mr. Roberts online. So, yeah, and as I said, he sort of ended up doing really sort of menial things towards the end of his life. Music didn't sort of see him through, but that's the way it often is. So let's have a listen to Skirts. Now, this is interesting. This song is quite sort of progressive. It deals with a social theme. Listen to the words. They're pretty interesting. This is VK3SL testing, of course.
skirt long years ago. But she didn't show hype as much as some girls I know. Oh, skirts, dresses, petticoats, hey, stop it, hey, you're a big attraction to me. Oh.
Okay, yeah, that was the driving rhythms of Slats Randall and his orchestra, and really on the beat, very energised performance and terrific solos. That was Skirts with Joe Roberts, who wrote the song apparently. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and I like themes which are slightly socially progressive or social commentaries. The next one, I don't know whether to call it progressive. It's really risque. In fact, it's probably one of the most risque songs I've ever heard from the 20s. It's very out there. In fact, the more I listened to it a couple of times and I thought to myself, golly, you wouldn't have even got away with this lyrics like this 50 years later. So we go back to 1929, again, Joe Roberts, and it's a well-known song, but just the lyrics are just extraordinary, particularly the last chorus. So yeah, if your sensibilities are easily offended, I suggest you switch off or put a pillow over your head or take a cold shower or something and come back. But anyhow, we'll see what happens. I'll put this on, and this is quite amazing stuff. So, and yeah, a great trombone solo in this one as well. This it sounds so like Miff Mole. I have a feeling it may have stepped in. But anyhow, we go back to 1929. We hear Bessie Couldn't Help It. And again, this is the music of Slats Randall, and I'm VK3SL testing.
Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could, oh I could. Now Bessie always tried to do the very best that she could, or you could. Now Bessie was as fair as the heavens above. Oh my Lord, how the gal could love. Bessie had a passion that was simply wonderful, I mean terrible. Oh, but Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could, oh I could. And someday she was bound to fall, that's all. Now man took Bessie in the parlor one night. I don't know what he did, but she hollered with delight. Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could, or I could, oh. Now Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could, or I could. Now Bessie was continually attempting to do the very best that she could, or you could. Now Bessie was as pretty as a tropical peach, and when she saw money, how that girl could reach. Well, Bessie had a passion that was simply wonderful, oh, terrible. Oh, but Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could, or I could. And like all ripe peaches, she was bound to fall.
that's all. Now Bessie went out in the country to feed the cows hay. Saw the cows papa and decided not to stay, 'cause Bessie couldn't help it any more than you could or I could.
How do you do? You're so gorgeous. You need a secretary, sweet and gorgeous. You're just a gorgeous thing. Paint and powder, powder and paint, little lipstick. It isn't necessary, sweet and gorgeous. You're like a breath of spring. When I got one glance of you, strolling down the avenue, there was nothing else to do but just go crazy. There's no flower sweeter than you. Red, red roses are only secondary, sweet and gorgeous. You're just a gorgeous thing.
Okay, yeah, we've been listening to a selection of music from Slats Randall and his orchestra, recordings made for Brunswick, mostly in Chicago. Some of them were made in Minnesota as well. And, a selection of recordings made between 1929 and that last one was from 1932. Interesting to observe on these recordings that the vocalist is often very under-mic'd, or the vocal mic is significantly less in quality than the microphones which are capturing the rest of the band. That's the way it seemingly is. There's a certain peakiness and dryness in the vocals, and you can hear it's very constricted, whereas there's a fullness to the sound of the rest of the band. So that's probably a bit of a technological lapse, or it sort of, or I suppose people wouldn't have noticed on wind-up gramophones, but it shows how the burgeoning technologies were sort of interfacing, and with the benefit of modern playback equipment, we can get that, we can understand these sort of things and how they transpired. Yeah, so that was, a bit of 20s mania to set the ball rolling. There's not a lot on the program tonight. I'll put another 20s record on. This is one from my collection. And this is just another Moon song, a Moon song that you won't hear on the mainstream media, something a bit different. So let's have a listen to Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians, a very scratched up old Columbia. But Me and the Man in the Moon. I'm VK3SL, testing.
night is calm and peaceful. Loving hearts are all in tune. There's two lonesome people in the whole wide world. That's me and the man in the moon. When the little birds are nesting and I listen to them croon, there's two lonesome people in the whole wide world. That's me and the man in the moon. Just before I'm counting sheep, through my window he comes to peep, and with each other we're sympathizing, looking at the happy sweethearts while they sit around and spoon. There's two lonesome people in the whole wide world. That's me and the man in the moon.
Okay, we just heard the music of the Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians, and I can't find out who was singing on that. Not an easy one to verify. I don't think we've got any specifics on that record. Can't hold it up to the light anymore. Never mind. Anyhow, that sort of sets the scene because, I'll follow on now with the Moon tape, which has sort of been the subject of a little bit of media interest. It's a bit of a storm in a teacup, really, but it's significant in the sense that it's sort of a local product and it features aspects of the moon landing, and particularly the flight of Eagle meeting up with Columbia. So, yes, that aspect of it sort of teased out quite a bit with a forum on ABC. But prior to that, there's moon landing coverage from 3DB, and I think it's Jeff McComas, and we get a very enthusiastic response from Bill Tipping. It's Mr. Melbourne, who gives a bit of a wrap of the event, which is quite exciting. It's very, very topical. And I think there's a bit of 3KZ and a bit of 3AW. There's a BBC World Service with its selective fade. We get to hear a bit of that. And someone's gone to the trouble of combining all of the local media and making up a little package. And that's the tape that was found in the second-hand shop and uploaded to YouTube some time ago. And that's spawned a bit of interest. So in fact, for those who are interested, tomorrow morning on the Today Show, apparently they're showing a little excerpt of me putting the tape on a buyer machine, and that was another episode. I think I described last week what happened. Interesting. It was certainly an interesting experience, but we'll see. It'll hopefully be aired tomorrow. I think that was the plan, but we'll wait and see. I won't be around to see it, but someone will video it, I think, in my circles. Anyhow, we'll move on and have a listen to this tape. It goes for a while, but I'll let it play out because it is the flavour of the month at the moment. There's so much coverage, and this is my little contribution to the story. So sit back and have a listen to the moon landing portrayal on Australian radio. And I'm VK3SL, and of course this is all in the spirit of testing, nothing else, no entertainment whatsoever.
Save at the final days of North End stock-taking time. And when you shop for stock-taking specials this week at North End, make sure you see the American Psychedelic posted.
6 o'clock. This is Jeff McComas for Herald Sun Radio News.
American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are flying their lander craft Eagle towards a landing on the moon in just under 16 minutes from now. An estimated radio audience of 500 million people is listening to the descent on broadcast in 36 languages on Voice of America. We'll be resuming a direct broadcast in a few moments' time, but here is a summary of the events so far this morning in man's greatest adventure. Ground control at Houston woke the sleeping astronauts Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin late last night our time by a radio message. Before breakfast, the trio had peaches, bacon squares, strawberry cubes and orange and grapefruit drinks. Conversation with ground control was relaxed. At one stage, Collins quipped, "We'll keep a close eye out for Bunny Girl." Then down to business, checking and rechecking systems with ground control. Aldrin and Armstrong took up their posts in the lander Eagle, and at 3:42, while both craft were behind the moon for separation, the first move of the descent began. About an hour later, the two craft were slowly separating, and at 8 minutes past 5, again behind the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin fired the lander's rocket to push it down into a different orbit, ready for the descent. A short time ago, the pair were only a short distance from the moon's surface. A special edition of The Sun will be on sale in the city this morning. It will cover the separation of the moon lander from Apollo 11, the descent, and the landing.
Continues to go very well with both Columbia and the Eagle. At 3:35 tomorrow morning, if the flight plan is adhered to, Armstrong and Aldrin will fire their first descent engine to lift off from the moon's surface and dock with Columbia. Then at 2:57 tomorrow afternoon, safely aboard Columbia, they'll fire the main engines that start their journey back to Earth. Bill Tipping sums up today's moon walk.
The 2 hours that shook the world. If you were looking for summing up of the history that was made today, I suppose that would be one way of putting it. But no words could ever describe the thrill that those two cool, matter-of-fact, down-to-earth history-making heroes gave the whole world today. It all just had to be seen on television to be believed, and that's it. Armstrong and Aldrin supplied all the words that were required. It was superfluous. For my part, I'm still not sure that the landing of the LEM wasn't perhaps even more exciting than the actual moon walk. The whole world held its breath when Aldrin showed that superb piece of flying skill in those last hazarded...
Armstrong's first words on the moon were, "That's one small step for a man, but one giant leap for mankind." The people in the street commented on the great space achievement.
Pictures were some of the most fantastic I've ever seen, and it's the most marvellous achievement. I only wish I had been one of the people concerned.
Personally, I thought the picture looked exactly like one of the science fiction films I have seen in the past.
I'm amazed to think that I should be do such a thing, and amazed at the progress in half a century, and really wonder what will happen in the next half century.
Oh, I thought the pictures on the moon today made each one of us feel a part of the moon landing, and it's a great feeling to think human beings have got the courage to go to the moon.
Amazing parts. It's 1900 to enter space travel and walking on other planets. It's absolutely fantastic.
I think them walking on the moon is wonderful, and I think the fact that we can have pictures of them on the moon is wonderful too.
Oh, the pictures are out of this world. It was really fantastic. It was a great achievement for the Americans.
3SL will bring you direct coverage of the next crucial stage of the Apollo project when the lunar module is scheduled to lift off to rendezvous with the mothership Columbia at approximately 3:55 tomorrow morning.
14,000 feet. Reported from Eagle. This burn lasts for 7 minutes, 14 seconds.
That fan looks like it's holding good, Houston. Roger, we concur. It's great. 1400, 185.
Communications being maintained at a high quality throughout.
Aldrin is reading the horizontal velocity first, and then the vertical velocity. It's now 1,424 feet per second vertical velocity, 187 vertical velocity. You go, Houston, your go at 3 minutes. Everything's looking good. Andrew? on H-Dot. Coming up through. This is H-Dot max now. I'm going right down UF1. Roger.
The ascent stage still burning well. Pushing the astronauts further out
now
and further across.
32,000 feet.
The aim is to achieve a good lunar orbit for easy rendezvous in about 3 hours' time.
Here you go, Houston. 4 minutes. You're going right down the track. Everything's great. Horizontal velocity approaching 2,500 feet per second. Got the beam off to our right now. Roger. Some 120 miles to go until insertion.
At insertion, they should be at an altitude of just under 60,000 feet, 59,927 to be exact.
Ready to go.
One of the longest single burns of a rocket in the whole mission, I think, if not the longest.
And the descent burn is a bit longer.
Oh, yes.
Radar off there. And there it is, right there. Where there's Schmidt.
It is relevant here, Peter,
And that's impressive looking at it.
to note that once they get up there, once they finish this burn, they're back into essentially Apollo 10 orbital characteristics, so that their rescue opportunities.
All three data sources are agreeing quite closely here. The three-color plot board on the front of mission control here is almost superimposed, as each of the three colors are scribed on the scribing plotter. Ionopolis, I think that is up to the right.
The engine in this ascent stage is quite a versatile piece of work, I understand, Mr. Leslie.
It's certainly got quite a lot of options and a lot of redundancy. It hasn't got...
Houston, you're still looking mighty fine.
It isn't a jimbling burn.
Good agreement in Delta V to go and both ag and things. Roger. To go in the burn.
I've been going for 6 minutes, 14 seconds.
1,482 feet per second, horizontal velocity. 800 to go. To go.
They're counting down from
Eagle. Open up the main shutoff.
Counting down to the shutoff.
Deep close, pressure's holding good, cross speed off. 350 to go. And by the engine arm. 90, okay, off, 50, cut down.
The ascent stages are shut down.
53373, 32.8 feet per second, 60,666. Eagle, Roger, we copy. It's great. Go. And we got our residuals.
These are the differences between the predicted and the actual velocities, altitudes.
Eagle Houston, trim residuals. Showing a paraloon of 9.1 nautical miles, apoloon 47.2 nautical miles on the pings. All three systems are go. Cut off velocity showing about 37 feet per second, plus or minus a foot or so on each of the three systems.
We now welcome Asian and Pacific services of Radio Australia to this live broadcast of the Apollo mission. The situation is very happy for the two Apollo astronauts, Armstrong and Aldrin, who have lifted off the moon successfully. About a minute ago, their engines shut down and have put them into lunar orbit.
Okay, that sounds a little on the high side.
And we're now listening to the voices of the astronauts as they speak to Mission Control in Houston, Texas.
47.3 by 9.5. Roger, 47.2 by 9.5. Tag says 9.5. 46.6.
A comparison between the two computers on board, the guidance systems. Being run out by Aldrin and Armstrong to Mission Control. Excellent communications this morning.
Eagle Houston, request the port stage reset, engine stops reset, flow control at hold and get a chance. Roger.
For those listeners who have just joined us, we have several experts in the ABC's Apollo studios here in Sydney. First, Dr. Brian O'Brien, space scientist of Sydney University.
Well, Peter, we've reached this dramatic moment where for the first time for the last day, the astronauts can be rescued from orbit. This was the one dreaded moment that they might be left on the lunar surface. Now they're back into orbit around the moon. They can be rescued.
Water showing the velocity and height. Here we go again. Let's proceed with P-52 astronomical.
Mr. Bob Leslie of the Department of Supply.
It's a great moment.
Replica from our Apollo 11 patch, Olive Branch.
We're thankful.
Houston, Roger, we copy. The whole world is proud of you.
We're very thankful to have them in orbit.
Communications breaking up somewhat, but we picked up the message to the astronauts that they're thankful and the whole world is proud. And while they are trying to establish better voice communications with the astronauts, we'll bring in our aviation medicine expert, Dr. John Lane of Australia's Department of Civil Aviation.
Well, in contradistinction to Earth launch, there really aren't any physiological stresses very much on the astronauts during this stage. At a rough computation, the average acceleration is about half a g during launch from the moon. Of course, it would be less at the beginning and more at the end, but this is nothing compared with the Earth launch.
With the lunar orbit tracking chart showing Eagle behind Spider some 20 degrees in longitude. Operations Director Chris Kraft commented that he felt like some 500 million people around the world were helping push Eagle off the moon and back into orbit. We're continuing to monitor transmissions between the ground and Eagle and Columbia. Apollo control standing by.
So we don't expect any physiological problems with the astronauts so long as their environmental control keeps working as of course we're very confident that it will continue to do.
Dr. Earl Hackett of Adelaide.
I just have this intense admiration for the technology, and just as when they landed on the moon, I feel the contrast between the astronauts' voices and what they must be feeling in the way of relief, excitement, thrill as the thing happens successfully.
We're listening out on the Voice of Apollo circuit live from Houston and live from the vicinity of the moon. For the first time for nearly a day now, we're not broadcasting direct from the surface of the moon, but once again back in moon orbit. Two separate moon orbits being described by two separate spacecraft. Columbia, with astronaut Michael Collins aboard, the mother craft, and Eagle. Eagle with the two men who yesterday walked for the first time on the moon, has now left the moon, successfully left the moon's surface, and is in orbit around the moon. Michael Daly of the ABC Science Unit, what lies ahead?
Well, the next phase, of course, is the rendezvous with Columbia, and finally the docking, which will take place at 7:30. And after this, they crawl back into the Columbia module, and they also have to take back all these samples of lunar rock, which our Earth-based scientists are waiting, I think, quite impatiently for now.
And during the next couple of hours, there will be several corrections of the orbit of Eagle to bring it into a better orbit for rendezvous and docking with Columbia. And we'll be bringing you up-to-date reports of these manoeuvres as they proceed, but it's gone so smoothly this morning. The last 20 minutes, a very tense moment for everybody, not least for the astronauts, but they seem to have coped with it in their cool, calm and collected way, which we've been accustomed to over the past few days of this remarkable Apollo 11 mission.
Eagle Houston, you can go ahead and turn your data link switch off.
On the point of these correction burns, they have in fact, although it's been a copybook flight, it has in fact exceeded the copybook. They're slightly above the predicted upper lunar high point that they're aiming for. The 47.2 is what they're aiming at now. The original prediction was for 44.07 nautical miles upper lunar. So there'll have to be a correction somewhere along the line.
And while the attention of the world has been focused on the Apollo astronauts, there has also been intense interest in that mysterious Russian Luna 15, which was circling the moon while the astronauts were walking on it. What's the latest on this, Michael?
Well, I'm just wondering, we had some more news just a short time ago that, again from Jodrell Bank, that Luna 15 went in so fast that it may have been damaged. I don't know how fast it went in. Maybe it crashed inadvertently. Maybe it wasn't supposed to land. So I think we can still speculate. I wonder what your thoughts on this are, Brian.
This is Apollo Control. During the ascent phase, the heart rates on the Eagle crew reached 90 for Neil Armstrong, 120 for Buzz Aldrin. They're now back down in the 80s. For some 28 minutes, 15 seconds from loss of signal with Columbia, 29 minutes, 52 seconds away from loss of signal on Eagle.
Dr. John Lane, how does this square up, the heart rates?
Well, again, it's the this is not really a physiological thing. It's a measure of the psychological stress of liftoff. But I'm rather amazed that they're in fact so low.
Yes, we're just getting technical readout, I think, now, Dr. Lane, so I think you can talk over Voice of Apollo now.
Well, I was saying that the a peak heart rate of 120 for Aldrin and 90 for Armstrong is really a very low peak, considering the crucial nature of the maneuver.
Mr. Leslie, you've been following the flight plan throughout this liftoff, second by second. How closely have they
delta V's, as they call it, are all within about 1 foot a second. The difference between the abort guidance system and the main guidance system was only 15 feet altitude. So they're really right on target. The next burn will be out of our view. The next little burn will be at the back side.
Yes, they actually lose signal. We just got information of loss of signal at 4:40 a.m. Australian Eastern Time. Slightly different times for the actual loss of signal for Eagle and for Columbia, which are not as yet travelling together. Well, final word on the Russian spacecraft from Dr. Brian O'Brien.
Well, I must admit I still find it a puzzle. Michael, in response to your earlier question, I really don't know what's going on there, and I guess we keep in suspense.
Well, we'll also be kept to a certain degree in suspense about the Apollo mission throughout the rest of the morning, but we're very confident that things are going so well that there should be no problem in the rendezvous and docking of the astronauts, which we'll be bringing you live. And until there is further important information from the Apollo mission, we'll now go back to Martin Royal and some music.
Yes, I've got a song for you, Peter, and everybody listening out there. A song from Nat King Cole, I think the opening titles of which aptly describe our thoughts at the moment. When you're smiling...
127 hours, 50 minutes, round elapsed time. Less than a minute now away from acquisition of the spacecraft Columbia. Hopefully flying within a few feet of it will be Eagle. Docking should take place about 10 minutes from now, according to the flight plan. However, this is a crew option matter. We're standing by for word that data is coming in from the two spacecraft.
At this point, we might mention that the last Apollo mission, Apollo 10, the docking maneuver was done so rapidly and so successfully that it caught everybody by surprise. So it is possible for the crew to select and go ahead and dock.
Lunar revolution number 27 for Columbia.
Standing by for acquisition of Columbia and Eagle coming out from behind the moon.
I have LEM AOS.
AOS, acquisition of signal from Eagle, the lunar module. Data comes through first before the voices. And these astronauts say so little when they're flying their spacecraft that we might not hear much chatter.
Roger.
Turning up the volume on their receivers on Earth. Hoping for some word of confirmation from the pilots of the spacecraft. All the maneuvers in front of the moon's surface went perfectly according to plan. Various small rockets were fired to thrust them into the right orbit so that Eagle and Columbia could follow each other in the same orbit. The successful completion of this maneuver would bring about a remarkable number of firsts and 100% successes for the Apollo 11 mission. But this is vital. Without rendezvousing and docking successfully, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin are unable to return to Earth alone in the lunar module, Eagle. Mr. Bob Leslie of the Department of Supply, what sort of activity would be going on in the tracking stations while waiting for these first words?
One of the big dishes at Goldstone will be tracking Eagle, and the other is tracking, or we hope it is tracking, Columbia, and they will be doing their very best to record all the data and play it back to the Mission Control Centre via the various networks. We don't hear much in this phase because the two vehicles have their separate communications.
Okay, Mike,
There we are.
I'll try to get position here, and then you got it.
They are talking to each other now.
That's right.
That was either Armstrong or Aldrin, most likely to be Aldrin, the pilot of the lunar module, talking to Mike Collins, the pilot of the command spacecraft. Aldrin actually pilots Eagle into dock with the command module.
How does the roll attitude look?
We still don't know just how close together they are.
Relative to Collins and Columbia, the crew of Eagle, Armstrong and Aldrin are lying on their sides, I think, Bob,
I'll stop.
as they guide into this
In fact, I
docking.
can stop right here if you like that.
Now they're instructing each other as to their relative positions. I think we could say it sounds confident.
They're in a phase of station keeping, it's called, where they're getting themselves lined up and rolled with relative to each other. The lunar module pilot, Aldrin, is looking through a window over his head with an optical sight, and he should be controlling Eagle to be just the right angle with respect to Columbia to make the final approach.
Full concentration in space at the moment. Not much speech. Michael, you were just saying that they're on their sides.
Well, relatively, it doesn't matter in a weightless condition, of course.
It really doesn't matter to the astronauts. Dr. John Lane, aviation medicine expert, which way up the astronauts are out there?
No, so far as they're concerned, there's no gravity vector, and any way up is the way they say it is.
Well, communication has been established, but there has been no confirmation one way or the other of the relative positions.
Eagle Houston, middle gimbal, and you might pass to Columbia. We don't have him yet. That's right.
Columbia's communications with Earth during the early part of this morning have not been as clear nor as consistent as those of Eagle, and Houston is asking Eagle to pass on a message directly to Michael Collins in Columbia, relaying it on. Dr. Brian O'Brien, how do they actually fly the lunar module at this stage?
Well, they're steering it by a series of rocket motors that essentially they can program to go in left, right, up, down, front and back, essentially any direction, any orientation that they wish. And the primary activation...
I'm not going to do a thing, Mike. I'm just letting her hold an attitude hold.
I think he said an attitude hold then, that it sounds as if their orientation is correct now. They just need to approach one another a little bit more closely.
Which means they'll just be in direct line of fire.
Apparently, that's if I picked that up properly then.
Although we don't have communications with Columbia, it's evident that they are quite close together, and this is probably the antenna problem. The pilot is very, very busy helping with the rendezvous, and he probably hasn't got time to select the best antenna or point the directional antenna to Earth. It's a very weak signal from the Omni antennas and is possibly also shielded by Eagle.
I think you can summarize by saying that they're talking one another into the docking at this stage. It sounds as if they have established visual contact.
Yes, we only seem to be hearing one of them occasionally. And this is up to their choice as to how much is actually fed to Earth?
That's correct. They're probably talking quite a great deal, one to another, one spacecraft to another, and sometimes they select, or Eagle selects, a relay to Earth.
Well, so many things have been absolutely bang on time with this Apollo mission that we might as well take bets as to when they will in fact dock. I think it was 7:32 Australian Eastern Time, which was the last time we had for docking according to the flight plan. And that's only about 40 seconds from now. How confident would our experts be that they will do it on time, Mr. Leslie?
Well, this crew have worked the time most magnificently, and I feel that they're probably within moments of docking.
Dr. O'Brien?
I'd go along with Bob, except I think they're probably getting pretty tired, maybe a little bit late, but I'm just guessing.
Dr. Lane?
Well, this last manoeuvre, it's a thing which does take a light touch, and it might take 30 seconds, or it might take 2 or 3 more minutes.
Well, we're still waiting on for some word from space. 7:32 a.m. has passed, but perhaps this was rather an artificial time to expect them definitely to dock. No word from Mission Control, but somebody's trying to get through. This type of static one can generally recognise as a certain sort, Bob.
Yes, that's right. They're turning up the gain on a station. We're taking out the noise suppression so that the voice can come through. Prior to this, they wouldn't have had a good enough signal for Columbia's voice, and now I think the tracking station realises the signal's coming up to the level where it could get through.
One faint voice just penetrating the static. Couldn't work out what it said.
Okay.
They're still talking to one another, I think, Peter.
What we should realise is that the telemetry's coming through, so the Houston people have magnificent displays on what they're doing with their motors and so forth. So, and they're sitting there monitoring this. They don't need to hear the voices.
How accurate would the radar be from Earth? Would it be able to tell how separated the two spacecraft are?
The ranging system is good for a mile or so, and they could determine it to that degree, but not instantaneously. It would take a moment or two, or a minute or two, for the orbit determination to get out a figure of that accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not following what happened in Apollo 10 when docking took place so rapidly that it seemed as though the lunar module was driving its way straight into the command module and occurred some 10 minutes before the predicted time. But we have no reason for concern, although this is, of course, a very tense and important moment, rendezvous and docking. We might look at this stage, Michael Daly, to what will happen after a successful docking.
Well, provided it comes off successfully, as I'm sure it will, the next thing the astronauts will have to sort of clean up shop, get rid of all excess dust. They'll be using a little vacuum cleaner to remove all the lunar dirt and so on before they transfer into the command module. This transfer is due to be completed on the present schedule by about 8:30, or slightly after 8:30. But at the moment, this is the one manoeuvre which hasn't gone according to time, so we'll just have to play this one by ear. And finally, of course, around about 11:30, the lunar module will be jettisoned and go into orbit around the sun, eventually to be burnt up on the sun after all this history-making feats of the past day or so.
Dr. Lane, at this stage, Dr. Lane, we have the problem of transferring the astronauts from what has been a lunar environment back to what is an Earth environment, from the LEM to the command module. What sort of the quarantine procedures begin at this point?
Well, the quarantine procedures...
Oh, excuse me. We're just getting the voices of the astronauts now.
Okay.
Very faint through the static. Something about cabin pressure. Pumping up cabin pressure. Now, once they do dock, the cabin pressure of Columbia is increased slightly above that of the Eagle lunar module, so that there's a continual small draft going through the tunnel. I wonder whether this means, in fact, that they might have started to dock, if not actually docked.
There was a Roger signal earlier, Peter. I don't know whether they really have docked or not. It sounds very promising.
He said, it's all yours. Okay, it's all yours. I feel that probably is indicative that they're just...
He says he didn't feel it dock. He thought they might not have docked. In fact, they have. Reporting a certain amount of jerkiness in the last phase. But we can definitely confirm that Eagle has docked with Columbia. They're there. Stand by for confirmation and report from Mission Control in Houston.
Apollo 11, Houston, go. Roger, I'm supposed to adjust the oxygen flow in this thing to 0.6 of a pound per hour, but being as how this transducer is not working right, can you give me an updated number? Affirmative. You want to go ahead and adjust your O2 flow until it just goes off the peg. And then crank the direct O2 valve back down about 5 degrees. Over.
Did you pick it up, Dr. O'Brien?
Yes, I think the astronauts were rather surprised that they had the answer so quickly, and they said, boy, you're really ready for that one. Roger and over, sort of thing.
Well, normally at about this stage we would get official confirmation from Houston of the docking and the actual time of docking, but this hasn't arrived as yet. But we are very relieved to hear that the astronauts are safely home with their mother craft. And while we wait on this announcement from Houston, we'll now just ask the panel who've been here with us through the early hours of this morning. They're reporting on the flow of oxygen between the two spacecraft. Well, we'll just hold the voice of Apollo down underneath us and bring it up if we have anything further to report. And we'll ask the panel for their reactions to this very relieving and very successful completion to today's manoeuvres. Mr. Bob Leslie of the Department of Supply.
Well, it's further magnificent work on the part of the astronauts, the communication systems, the ground stations, the networks connecting the ground stations, and it's just a wonderful piece of work on the part of all these people and all this equipment.
Dr. Brian O'Brien.
Roger, stand by.
Well, of course, the scientific mission appears to have been almost perfectly accomplished, quite apart from the sheer adventure of the whole mission. And everything seems to almost unbelievably successful. Well, I think we should bear in mind that they're not home yet. They're on the way, but they're not quite home yet.
Dr. Lane.
Again, apart from the sheer excitement of the whole mission, perhaps the interesting thing from the point of view of the astronauts themselves and their physical condition has been there's really been so little to comment on. And this, of course, is a very satisfactory situation. Their condition has been good throughout. The equipment has performed well. The spacesuits on the moon performed well. there was this minor malfunction apparently in the LEM environmental control system just a little while ago, not of any great consequence, and it'll be of even less consequence shortly because, of course, the LEM will be discarded. Altogether, things have gone extremely well.
We'll be returning for our next live broadcast between 2:30 and 3:30 p.m. this afternoon, Australian Eastern Time, for the next vital stage. That's in orbit around the moon now, and they have to get out of the moon's gravitational pull and return to Earth.
Apollo 11, that's okay, we'll get it later.
But Michael Daly has a comment looking even further ahead than that.
Well, excuse me again, it's been a magnificent spectacle, and we're going to have to wait rather a long time before we get another spectacle like it. In fact, about 10 years to the projected landing on Mars. But we've got a preliminary curtain raiser, if you like, on Mars coming up in just over a week's time, when the first of 2 Mariner craft arrive near the surface of Mars to televise back far more detailed pictures than we received from Mars back in 1965, when Mr. Leslie here was running the Tidbinbilla tracking station.
Well, with our thanks to the panel who've been on since the early hours of this morning, I now hand to Dr. Earl Hackett of Adelaide for the last word on Apollo.
Well, I think what we all feel here in the studio is a general hooray for technology. We seem to have been awake in this place for about 2 days and nights, listening all the time to Apollo base and therefore to the astronauts, and sharing the tensions and the relaxations as they occurred. I'm glad that I haven't to face elaborate journeys in space. It may be jejune, but a trip to the moon would upset my tranquility base. Good heavens, I've started to speak in natural limericks. Better get some sleep.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hackett, and everybody else here in the ABC's Apollo studios.
This is Apollo Control.
Here we are.
Communications are somewhat scratchy with Apollo 11. Columbia and Eagle now reunited to become Apollo 11. Again, our best estimate on the time of docking was some 3 minutes after the pre-mission time of 128 hours. Continuing to monitor this 27th lunar orbit, where the two-way communications between the two spacecraft.
And at that point, we shall leave this special ABC Apollo coverage this morning.
Okay, this is VK3SL, test transmission on 162 metres and also streaming. And we're listening to Moon Landing Betrayal on Australian Radio, 1969. We'll just listen a bit further and then we'll wind up operations tonight.
This is the Macquarie National News, Jim Archer reporting. America seems certain to make another manned moon landing in November. The director of the Apollo 11 mission, Lieutenant General Samuel Phillips, says Apollo 12 will be given the go-ahead when the Apollo 11 men splash down safely on Friday. He explained that the Apollo 12 was already being readied in the assembly building at the Cape Kennedy Moonport in Florida. The 3 Apollo 11 astronauts will receive the strangest welcome a nation has ever accorded its heroes when they splash down in the Pacific. Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins will be sprayed with disinfectant, sheathed in an airtight garment, hustled into a leak-proof trailer and flown to a quarantine laboratory in Houston. President Nixon will be on the recovery carrier Hornet to greet them, but he'll only see them through the window of the trailer. At present, the 3 men are asleep in their command ship Columbia as it hurtles towards the Earth at speeds of around 3,000 miles an hour.
This is 3KZ News, placing the world at your fingertips.
Satisfied that all was well with their Apollo spacecraft headed for home from the moon, the Apollo 11 astronauts have signed off early and turned in for a good sleep. Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins were up early yesterday to prepare for the lunar module's blast-off from the moon, the rendezvous in space, and the critical rocket firing to escape from moon orbit. They finally started their rest period when Apollo was more than 7,000 nautical miles from the moon, traveling at 4,860 feet per second toward Earth. Mission Control in Houston said that the scheduled rest period was 10 hours, but it had been decided to let the astronauts sleep until they woke up of their own accord. Meanwhile, ground stations reported their last contact with Eagle, the small ferry craft which took Armstrong and Aldrin safely to the surface of the moon and then returned them to Collins and the orbiting command ship. When the astronauts splash down in the Pacific Ocean early Friday our time, they'll be sprayed with disinfectant, sheathed in an airtight garment with a gas mask to breathe through, hustled into a leak-proof trainer and flown to a quarantine laboratory in Houston.
The moon landing with emotion, pride, and a sense of solidarity which only the greatest achievements of mankind could engender. In Moscow, academician Vinogradov, writing in Pravda, congratulated the American astronauts on what he called an outstanding achievement and wished them a happy return to Earth. The Soviet press, which at first gave scant attention to the moon,
months of Astra Gilberto and arranger Gil Evans. The
have not yet made any reference to the moon landing. The Soviet Union has announced that the Luna 15 unmanned spacecraft, which orbited the moon while the Americans were there, has landed on the moon and ended its work. The announcement said Luna 15 had completed a program of research, but did not use the word successfully, as is normal on such an occasion. The Soviet spacecraft ended its flight about 2 hours before the American astronauts blasted off on their return flight. The BBC's special correspondent in Moscow says that from the official announcement, it seems likely that the spacecraft crash-landed, shattering the delicate and complicated instruments on board. There have been widespread speculation that Luna 15 would land on the moon, scoop up rock samples, and return with them to Earth. This news comes to you in the World Service of the BBC. The French Foreign Minister, Monsieur Schuman, has proposed
the descent engine, as well as the heavy spacesuits, cameras, and other valuable equipment were left behind. As Eagle blasted off towards a rendezvous with the command ship Columbia, orbiting overhead, Neil Armstrong reported back to ground controllers here in Houston that all was going well.
That was Terry Brown in Houston, Texas, with edited actuality of the takeoff from the moon. Soon after takeoff, Eagle went into an orbit ranging from 10 nautical miles to 47 nautical miles above the surface of the moon. The astronauts then fired the rockets to put the Eagle into a circular orbit, concentric with Columbia, piloted by Michael Collins. The docking of the two craft became known to the world soon after Eagle and Columbia had emerged from behind the moon, where they'd been out of radio contact. The astronauts have begun opening the hatches to crawl through the tunnel between the two craft. They will join Michael Collins in the command ship Columbia for their return to Earth. Eagle, the lunar lander, will then be sent into orbit around the Sun. The flight plan provides for Apollo 11 to leave moon orbit shortly before 3 o'clock this afternoon, Australian Eastern Time, to begin its journey of 250,000 miles towards splashdown in the Pacific 2.5 days later. Scientists at Britain's Jodrell Bank Observatory say the Soviet Union's unmanned spacecraft Luna 15 is down on the moon but has probably crash-landed. So far, there has been no Soviet announcement. The British scientists reported that the spacecraft changed its orbit and then landed in the Sea of Crisis, about 500 miles from where the American Eagle touched down yesterday. The director of Jodrell Bank, Sir Bernard Lovell, said Luna 15 evidently reached the surface of the moon at about 300 miles an hour. Nothing was likely to survive at such a speed, but instruments may have been ejected before impact. A late message from Moscow said that Luna 15 had landed on the moon and ended its work. The official Soviet announcement did not elaborate, but correspondents say the brief statement ended speculation that Luna 15's mission may have involved a return to Earth. Turning to other news. The Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, Admiral J.J. Hyland, said in Canberra yesterday the establishment of a naval base in Western Australia would be a valuable counter.
Okay, we'll fade at that point. The tape does go on for quite some more time, and we have some Peter Evans as well on the ABC towards the end of the tape, which is quite interesting to listen to, but we'll save that for another time. And at this point, I'll start to wind up operations off to the Ham Fest tomorrow. And I don't want to be too late, but I'll stand by briefly in case Frank's there. And so we'll just finish off with something sort of something a bit musical, I think. Last week we heard the young soprano Patricia Janekova, and we'll hear her again. I'll hear a wonderful recording of her singing the Frühlingsstimmen by Strauss, and this is in a New Year's concert in Vienna a few years ago, and she's about 16, 17 here, and so this is a testimony to her wonderful talent, so she's someone to look out for. I'm sure she'll be a major player on the world operatic stage when she finishes her studies. So, yeah, this is a nice way to finish, I think. All right, at this point, I'll say cheers for now, and as I said, I will listen back, and thank you for your indulgence if you've listened this far, and yeah, hopefully next week we'll continue with we'll find some themes, some material to dredge up, and continue these tests. All right, thank you, and all the very best. VK3SL now going, or almost going clear with a musical interlude.